I know that we still have some people signing in, so I'll take this opportunity to just slowly ease us into our meeting here this morning. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Leora Malik. I'm on the City Council. I represent District 7. Woohoo! Yay, District 7. Yay! Unfortunately, Councilor Alexander is unable to be here today. He had a family emergency and is out of town. So sending our best to him and his family in yet another difficult week for them. So as folks are filtering in, again, thank you so much for being here this morning. We are filming this for those who are unable to be here. We are not live streaming it, so people cannot tune in and watch now, but it will be available after the fact, thanks to Access Framingham in the back. So thank you, Access Framingham. So I'm going to ask all of our presenters to use the mic, and when people have questions, I'm going to ask you to come up here to the mic, again, just so it can be captured in the filming, so that after the fact, people can hear the questions. We're going to start off with some presentations, and my hope is that the bulk of what happens this morning will be conversation and questions and hearing from you. So I want to appreciate the public schools for opening up this building for us here this morning and allowing us to meet here. There is an after-school fair also happening. Maybe you noticed when you were coming in that there's other stuff happening. So there's a lot of vibrancy and activity here this morning. I want to recognize, well, there's a lot of people here, so I think let's get this party started. So again, welcome to a Warren Road neighborhood meeting where we're talking about public safety in a sort of holistic perspective on what public safety is. And we'll go down the table. We'll start with police to give an overview. We do have some slides that we'll make available for folks after the fact. Then we'll talk about traffic. We'll hear from the Traffic Commission, and then we'll hear from public schools, and then we'll open it up to questions and conversation. So the hope is that all the presentations and then the conversation, but also we'll see how it goes. So I think with that, I'll recognize there's Tiffany Maskell, also the elected District 7 school committee member, Adam Freiberg, elected District 4 school committee member, as well as Phil Ottaviani, City Council Chair and District 6 City Council member, and any other electeds in the room that I should recognize? Great. Okay. You're up. So do you guys want to all introduce yourselves maybe? Yeah, why don't we go down the line, introduce yourselves.
Do that first? Absolutely. So Deputy Chief Sean Riley, I oversee operations for the police department.
Lieutenant Harry Wareham, I oversee support services. I also serve on the Traffic Commission.
Bill Sedowitz from the Public Works Department, and I'm also on the Traffic Commission.
Lincoln Lynch, Executive Director of Finance and Operations for the School Department, and I'm also on the Traffic Commission.
Hi, good morning. I'm Bob Tremblay, Superintendent of Schools in Framingham. Welcome to the Chris Walsh Performing Arts Center here at Fuller Middle School. Glad to have you, and thank you, Peter Beeren, for being in the back to help us with AV today. Much appreciated.
Good morning. I'm Bob Lewis, Director of Public Works.
I prefer to stand. So just real quick, just so if I can introduce the folks that I have with us as well, because they'll be able to hopefully answer some questions. Sergeant Jay Ball oversees our Community Impact Unit. Officer Hendry is our safety officer, works under Lieutenant Wareham. Officer Devlin, he's kind of a hybrid right now. He's overseeing our housing liaison position because our current housing liaison officer is on military deployment, but he's also assigned to the traffic unit, so he can kind of answer both questions. So I have a PDF that we had our crime analyst put together. I'll briefly go through it. I won't go too in depth because I think the questions and answers is probably more engaging than death by PowerPoint. So Lincoln, if you don't mind, if you can just go to the next slide, please. So we'll just quickly go over some of the accident data. So There were 2,613 reported accidents within the city of Framingham between January and November of 2023. In this specific, the Warren and Oaks Musterfield area, there were 106. So we broke it down, accidents involving bikes, hit and run accidents, just your prototypical accident motor vehicle, and then pedestrian accidents. So you have to understand where some of this data is coming from, and it'll show up in a later slide, is this neighborhood encompasses Concord Street along where the courthouse is. So we do have a lot of accidents that, happen there, and you'll see that on our density map when we get to that point. So Warren and Oaks Musterfield accident data by month, as you can see, January through November, how it kind of just ups and downs throughout the year. Spiked in October with 14, and as of when this data was run, we had a total of 7 for the month of November. If we could go down one more slide, please. So this is a density map. It'll show you the accident type by the color. And you can see up there along Concord Street is, where our major accidents are happening, right? Or our quantity of accidents are happening. But they are, honestly, when you look at this, you'll see that they're happening in the areas we probably prototypically understand, right? Intersections, stop signs, people failing to stop, et cetera. So the traffic component, we'll talk a little bit more about how we enforce traffic, based on data points. And again, the density map, the lower one just shows, where most of our accidents are happening, by frequency. The darker that color gets, that's where most of our accidents are happening. You can go to the next slide. Thank you. So calls for service. There were 51,213 total calls for service in the city of Framingham, again, January through November when these stats were run. In the Warren Oaks Musterfield area, 2,623. So the top 10 calls for service, motor vehicle stops, 383. There was probably a lot more than that. Not every officer logs their motor vehicle stops, so there was probably more, but there are some that really like to log that stuff. Medicals, 326. We have a very large elderly population that lives within your district, with Framingham housing there, so medicals, naturally would be up. But believe it or not, that's always one of our top calls for service throughout the city. If we took, any neighborhood in the city, medicals are usually going to be pretty high on our list. Directed patrols, that's again proactive patrols that the officers are going out there and say they're just calling off on a particular traffic location, park and walk. Again, that's proactive numbers right there. Prisoners to court, self-explanatory. How many prisoners we've been, bringing to court when we log that. Again, not really impacting the neighborhood. It's just us, logging our activities. Well-being checks, 184. Again, a lot of those, I bet if we broke this down even further, would be in the Framingham Housing Authority neighborhood specifically. Having been the housing liaison officer myself back in the 2009 to 2013, I did that just about every day, well-being checks. So that, again, not an area of concern for the most part. So suspicious activity, this is where we start to get a little bit more into the weeds. This is where you folks help us. When you call and there's something unusual going on in your neighborhood, someone maybe doesn't fit, they're walking around, they look like they're scoping out, especially this time of year, right? Porch pirates, they're all, the Amazon packages. You're gonna call us and say, hey, this person fit in this description, doesn't fit the neighborhood, they're not from around here, I've never seen them, and they seem like they're casing the place. Again, we'll log that as suspicious activity. We'll go and we'll investigate that person. Hey, what are you doing? What's your name? Where do you live? 99% of the time, that person checks okay, but it's that 1% of the time that we actually catch someone doing the act, and it's worth it for us to go. So please, keep calling us on that stuff, because that's very proactive on your part. You know your neighborhood far better than we do. You live there. You see everything 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, so you know what fits and what doesn't. 911 calls, again, very self-explanatory. Could be someone, it could be a domestic that it started with. 911 call. It's in a true emergency. Accidents, we went over that. Noise complaints. Most of those noise complaints come in during our summer months, as we all know, especially those of you that live down by the pond. So, again, we take that stuff seriously. You know, quality of life issues. Believe it or not, quality of life issues is probably your biggest issue in your neighborhood. It's not crime, it's quality of life. It's noise, speeding cars, all of that stuff really that bothers people. So just keep that in mind. You live, when you look at the data, in a very, very safe neighborhood. Legal notes, that's just what it is. You know, we could be doing a warrant, we could be serving paperwork for court as a witness, etc. That's all that means is a legal note. If we could just go down a little bit more, please. So again, just showing kind of like the calls for service per month. June always spikes up. We do a lot of increased patrols in your particular neighborhood, especially down by the beach in June. We really start to ramp up some proactive policing in that area based on just historical data that we're going to be getting calls for service down there, so we try to proactively get out there. So that's probably where that spike shows there. Go to the next slide, please. Okay, so this is the final slide we'll talk about before I hand it off. So this is the density map for calls for service. So as you will see, this is the neighborhood that we captured the data from for this particular meeting. Everything in the green. So if you notice over by the courthouse, Arsenal Road, the Musterfield, again, we do a lot of calls for service there. There's a lot of people living in a very small geographical area, and that doesn't surprise us, okay, when we're looking at that. A lot of medical calls, et cetera, going on. Rose Kennedy Lane, again, very elderly housing complex. We do a lot of medical calls up there, a lot of well-being checks. So that all makes sense to us. We're actually in a kind of a hot spot right here, but you have two schools. We have school resource officers in the schools, Fuller Middle School and McCarthy. They generate calls for service during the school days. So again, not that big of a deal, very self-contained. So if you really look at the map overall, and we're looking at it from the police perspective, all this makes sense, and a lot of it is where we put our proactive patrols. That's why we have someone specifically assigned as a housing liaison officer to deal with these issues, and they're not necessarily bad issues. So that's where we have, and what we're looking at when we deploy resources anywhere in the city or specifically to your neighborhood. We look to see where activity is happening, okay, and then we will address it as such. And before I hand it off, and then I'm assuming this is going to come up in questions, but right now some of our biggest crime trends, if you own a Kia, I happen to own 3 of them, they're getting stolen left and right, okay, and they're getting stolen by juveniles. So I can't really explain. One of these gentlemen might be able to explain the trend a little bit better than me, but if you own a Kia, see if you can bring it to the dealership. I believe there is an update that they can do in the vehicle that will help prevent this from happening. But this is not only a trend in Framingham, this is a national trend that's happening. Another one is phone scams that are happening, specifically more targeted towards our elder population, that they're calling and they're keeping you on the phone. And they're saying that, you know, money needs to be transferred out of your bank, needs to be put into either a Bitcoin machine or transferred to another bank account. This one is scary because they literally will keep your loved one on the phone the entire time, okay? And they'll direct you into the banks, tell you what exactly to do. And I know this one is happening for sure because I've had 2 relatives become victim in the last 2 weeks on this. One lost $35,000, and the other one luckily didn't lose a thing. But again, that hits close to home. It's actually hit my family twice in the last couple of weeks. So just keep that in mind, that these are some of our biggest scams, especially this time of year. And watch out for your packages. That's, I think, you see that all over the news. We're all getting packages delivered. Take those things inside, or have a neighbor. If you're not going to be around for a day or 2, have them come and grab your stuff. So I'm going to pass it on, and I think we're going to do questions and answers afterwards. Is that what we're going to do?
I am just briefly, Mr. Sedowitz, before you talk. Because Warren Road is so long, I'm just curious to get a sense of who's in the room. So if you live in Warren Road, sort of closer to Walnut Street, could you raise your hand? Okay, awesome. And if you live on Warren Road, maybe between the Oaks and Flag Drive area, sort of middle Warren, if we call, and then we'll call it Southern Warren, maybe down closer to Prindiville in that area. All right. Okay. And then what about on the Prindiville? Sorry, I should have given you all the options to start, but what about on sort of the Prindiville side there? Yeah, a couple. Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, good morning, everyone. As I said, Bill Sedowitz. In addition to being a city employee, I'm also a resident. I've lived around the corner for almost 30 years now, so I'm very familiar with this area of the city. It was mentioned that 3 of us are on the Traffic Commission. I did want to note that does not represent a quorum. We're not meeting as a commission this morning, so unless we're referencing a prior vote or decision, we're speaking as individuals. The Traffic Commission spends most of its time taking input and concerns from residents. Speeding is the most common. Frankly, it's the most difficult to address. Before I talk about data, I just wanted to talk about speeding in general, speed limits. There's generally 2 categories. Neither one is generally within the sole discretion of the city. So the state, in almost every case, needs to weigh in. But there's regulatory speed limits, which are rare. Less than 10% of the streets have regulatory speed limits. Those were set at some point in time. Somebody did actually a study, looked at the road, looked at driving conditions, came up with a speed limit, and that was approved by the state. So in this area, Warren Road, Normandy Road, Arsenal Road, and Walnut Street have regulatory speed limits. So those have black and white speed limit signs. Those cannot be changed without, or those limits cannot be changed without state approval. Everything else falls to a statutory speed limit. This is the one case a number of years back the state allowed communities to change their statutory speed limits for thickly settled areas. If they chose from 30 to 25 miles per hour, you could either do that by street or citywide. The city adopted that in 2019. Those statutory speed limits are also referred to as unposted because generally you will not see a speed limit sign. So a lot of people come to us and, why isn't there a speed limit sign on my street? Because it's got a statutory speed limit, and those speed limits are posted at the gateway entrances to the city, but generally they are not posted on individual streets. So I talked about speed data. Generally, the Public Works Department and the Police Department can both collect speed data. They have the devices to do that. If we get an extraordinary number of requests, we can also sub that out to a private contractor. We've collected data in over 200 locations in the last couple of years. Speeding is prevalent throughout the city as it is throughout the Commonwealth and the country. So about 1/3 of the time, the speeds are within the speed limit. So the majority of the time, speeds are beyond that. Some cases slightly beyond that, and then it gets worse from there. When you look at speed data, the key metric is what's called the 85th percentile speed. So that's a federal standard, which means that 85% of the cars are traveling at that speed or below. The premise is that most drivers drive prudently for the road conditions. So generally what becomes problematic is that 15% to drive higher than that. So normally when traffic professionals look at speed data, you look generally at the 85th percentile speeds. You also look at the average speeds, and then at least I do tend to look at the outliers. So the people that 15%, are they just over that 85, or are they significantly over? And at least to me, that's something I take a look at. So this area has frequently been to the Traffic Commission for different issues. I think the slide behind you is the data we've collected over the last several years. It includes many of the streets. And then there's the second page is a summary, which again, we pulled out the traffic volumes, the traffic speeds by direction. There's pretty extensive data packages that go to support those. And for anybody that's looked at Traffic Commission background material, we actually include all the data. So if you're curious, it's all broken into 5-mile-per-hour increments by each hour of the day. So there's a lot of data to dive into if you want. I'm sure there'll be questions. If you look at the data for this area, Denison is actually the worst. 10 to 11 miles per hour is the 85th percentile compared to the speed limit. Then Oaks Road is next, and then Warren. I know a lot of people here from Warren Road goes from there. I'm sure people are concerned about the speed. We're concerned about the speed. Again, speeding is tough to address, and not that it's probably a comfort, but there are a number of streets in the city did fare worse than the streets in this neighborhood. But I think I'll leave it at that.
You have anything, Bob? You good? Good? Okay. Again, I'm Lincoln Lynch. I'm the Executive Director of Finance and Operations for the school district. So as far as we're concerned with the neighborhood and traffic, as the Deputy Chief mentioned, as you all know, we have Fuller Middle School here, McCarthy across the street, and we start and end the day at the same exact time. It's the only elementary, McCarthy that is, that starts prior to the 9:15, 9:20 start that all the other elementary schools. Doing a little research, they used to share buses, Fuller and McCarthy. So that's why the start times are the same. So when that happens, you have parents dropping off at Fuller, you have buses coming in, you have the same thing happen at McCarthy, and then to add to it, you have the Farley building next door that houses Mass Bay, at least for another week or so, and then they'll be moving over to Mount Waite. But you have all of that happening at the same time in the morning, and I'm sure you've all seen it. It all backs up on Flag and then on Normandy for the most part. So we recognize that, and we've been working with the police department and with DPW, and we changed the traffic pattern at McCarthy on November 15th, almost exactly a month ago. So I hope you all have seen the difference. I've been out there multiple times every week to monitor it, morning and afternoon. I think the change has alleviated a majority of the backup that used to happen on Flag, the parents picking up in the afternoon and dropping off in the morning. So there's a map here. Hopefully it's big enough on the screen. But what we did was we basically flipped the pickup and drop off. We used to have parents, they would line up here and drive down the little access road through the parking lot and pick up their students here, and this is where the majority of the backup was happening. So what we did was we totally flipped it. We have cars, parents coming in the front entrance here on one side of the entrance. We have buses coming in the same entrance. We thought that might be an issue at the beginning, but working with the bus company, and again, the police department assisting with some details, it seems to be going really smoothly. So the buses come down the front entrance, along the front of the building and drop. The parents actually go all the way around McCarthy, drop and pick up on the side of the building, and then exit where they used to come in. So we've seen a huge difference, a huge change, a lot less phone calls to us about traffic and about almost accidents happening on Flag Drive. So again, thanks to the police department and of course DPW to make that change. So I'm hoping that you've all seen an improvement, especially at 8 o'clock in the morning and 2 o'clock in the afternoon with that traffic on Flag and Normandy. As far as the schools are concerned, I think that's really what we have. Again, I'm on the Traffic Commission. I see all the data. I see the maps. On the third Tuesday of every month, we review that, and this area has come up a lot. So you can rest assured that the city administration, the school department, we're focused on this area to alleviate that and to help in any way we can. So that's it from me. What's that? You're saying the crosswalk that we installed behind?
Generally, students walking to school and foot traffic. I don't
Yeah.
know if that's PD or if that's you guys, but I know that's come up from residents also.
Yeah, I can touch on it a little bit. If you've read the papers, watched school committee meetings, city council meetings, we have a busing issue in the city. We have 20 less buses on a good day than what our contract calls for. We went out to bid, we got a bidder, we said we need 77 buses to run our three-tiered busing system effectively and get about 6,500 out of our 9,200 students to school on a bus. With 20 less buses, we're transporting roughly about 1,000 less students, which means more parent drop-offs, and as Councilor Malik mentioned, a lot more walkers. So we had the details at the beginning of the year to help that out. We have the crosswalk behind the building, McCarthy, but there are a lot more walkers out there, and we are cognizant of that. We have school staff out there to make sure, both from Fuller and from McCarthy, crossing the 3 crosswalks that I believe pass Flag. So we are cognizant of it. We have staff out there, dedicated staff from both the middle school and the elementary school to make sure our kids are safe walking to and from school. So, thank you.
Thanks, Link. Just to add a couple points around what you had said, we go back at with crosswalks and traffic for students getting across the streets. So our crossing guards are employed through the Framingham Police Department. But the police department has worked with the school department as well to provide opportunities for trying to encourage staff. For example, if you're a cafeteria employee, it's a different bargaining unit. It's a union for cafeteria employees. But you could see a situation where maybe a cafeteria employee could help students cross the road in the morning, work in the cafeteria midday, and then help at the end of the day. It's a matter of just finding the employees who are interested in doing that. Speaking of contracts, the other piece is, well, if the start time at McCarthy and Fuller are the same, why don't you just stagger those and reduce the traffic? That's a bit more complicated because it is also involved with contract negotiations. It becomes effectively a change of working conditions for all the staff in one or the other building. So in this case, you were to make McCarthy start later to align with other schools. So that being said, it's not that it's impossible to do, it just requires negotiations. And so we have engaged some of those conversations with our teachers union, and there are 6 different unions that this would impact. So you can imagine that it takes a little bit of time to have those discussions. So I just wanted to put some context around, it's not as easy as just flipping the switch. There are some additional complications that are rooted in some contract language as well.
So you've heard a lot of detail. Again, I'm Bob Lewis, Director of Public Works. As Deputy Chief Riley said, you folks are the eyes and ears out there for us. You can see that this is a team effort for public safety, and they take it seriously here in Framingham. I've been here just a short period of time as director, but I've lived here for 42 years, and the city does a good job. I sometimes get caught calling it a town, but it's a city now, and they do a really, really good job here on public safety. From Public Works' point of view, you know, we take our public ways seriously. We want to keep them plowed as we're approaching the snow season. We've got a full plan in place. We've done training, practices, and the staff there are prepared to handle the roads. And we work with Dr. Tremblay here on when we have to make the calls to close school. So things like that. We're going to get some heavy rain coming in the next couple of days. Leaves are coming down. Call us if you see a catch basin. We don't have the staff out there to travel every road, but we do respond to the calls. So if you see a catch basin that's flooding, again, that's a safety issue for us and for you. Just don't hesitate to call. Potholes, call us. We'll get out there and fill them up. Water and sewer issues, you know, we've got the geothermal project that's happening in the neighborhood here. You know, we've got our inspectors on that job to make sure that they comply with our regulations. So we're here for any questions. If you have any questions, I'll turn it over to Councilor Malik.
All right, my friends, now we'll open it up to questions. I'm hopeful that somebody might have one. Yes, all right, and we are going to ask folks to please come up to this microphone to speak so that it can be caught. Yeah.
Kirk Hartung, 120 Warren Road. Thank you very much, first of all, for having this meeting. I find it helpful, and I appreciate the interaction with the community. I'm very concerned about speed. I was concerned about the traffic, with Normandy, but it sounds like that's been resolved, because that was a real dangerous issue as far as I was concerned at certain times of the day. But if that's resolved, that's great. The speeding issue is an extreme concern for safety. Several years ago, our front porch brick was destroyed, car coming through, drunk driver. But I'm concerned about sort of the disparity. And I've talked with Mr. Sedowitz about this. It's 25 in a certain point on Warren Road, and then you go down to another point, and it's 30, which is goofy. I understand it's a state regulation, and I've had the paperwork that Mr. Sedowitz forwarded to me. But, Counselor, that's something that maybe could be pursued to change that. In my estimation, it should be 25 all the way along there. I look down when I take my dogs out in the evening, and I can see that flashing speed light further down on Warren Road. I'll see that. And I'm seeing cars going by 35 to 40 miles an hour in the evening. Do you all see that? Yes. Okay. I'm concerned about that, and I don't see, from my standpoint, much of anything being done about it. I know it's a concern getting the vehicles out there, to police. My question is about the technology. I'm from Seattle originally. When I go out there, my brother said, careful going through this intersection because there's a camera up there, and if you run run the red light, you're going to get a ticket. My question is, does the technology exist to do a photo speed ticket? In other words, if I'm driving along Warren Road any time of the day, 40 miles an hour or 35, is there technology that exists that could get that information and help put a halt to that? Are there other options such as speed bumps? I'm not real wild about that, or more stop signs, because that creates more noise. But does the technology exist? Because I think it's crucial. It's just a matter of time until somebody's going to get seriously injured on Warren Road.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So I heard two issues. I'll ask Mr. Sedowitz if you can talk about how to change via the regulatory with the state, if you can address that issue. And then Deputy Chief Riley, or Lieutenant Wareham, the cameras on intersections and speeding, and can people be mailed tickets, right? So those are the two questions that I heard.
So Warren Road does have a regulatory speed limit. It's referred to as a special speed regulation. There are two different zones, as you mentioned. To change that, there is a process. A lot of data has to be collected, and it has to be submitted to the state. I've only been involved once when we tried it. We tried to reduce the speed limit on Dudley Road from 40 to 35. This predates the dog park and the skate park, but the ball fields were there, the elementary school was there. We engaged a consultant, collected a lot of data, got the Board of Selectmen to endorse reducing that. We sent it to the state, and they came back and said no. So again, they look heavily at the existing speeds, with the thought being that if people are driving at a certain speed, if most people are, that's a prudent and safe speed. So they referred to the 85th percentile speed. They would not let us reduce it. Again, we've tried it once, but I thought that was a great candidate to reduce from 40 to 35, and it didn't happen. So haven't tried it since. Given the data that exists for Warren Road, I think it's extremely unlikely, but that's not to say that it couldn't be tried.
Thank you, Bill. So currently in Massachusetts, it's illegal to use cameras as for traffic enforcement. I believe there is a bill before the state where they're looking into having some pilot cities or towns to see how that works out, but currently we cannot do that.
And I'd just like to add to that, there's a lot of complications to it. I mean, not that it can't be done, but so who's going to now view all of those offenses? Like, someone has to actually go through all of that data, right? Who's going to write the citations, and who do we write it to? I mean, that's like a serious question. I have cars that are registered to Sean Riley, but my 3 sons drive them. So who do you write the citation to? Yeah, but if Sean Riley didn't commit the infraction, no, I understand it's my vehicle, but if I'm not the operator, how do you cite me? These are the complications that I'm telling, that you deal with. This is the law. This is the reality. I'm not trying to say, I totally understand the concept, but it's not as easy as just sending a ticket to Sean Riley if he wasn't driving the car. So we gotta be careful with that stuff. There's a lot of stuff that goes along with it.
My question is, what's it going to take to get something like this done? Is it going to take some student walking to school, seriously injured, somebody out walking with their dog in the evening, be injured or killed before something is done?
The state legislature is actually doing something right now. That's what Lieutenant Wareham was just saying. There's going to be some pilot programs, so we can then answer, hopefully, some of those questions that will definitely come up, right? Who do you send that citation to? Who's going to write that citation?
Mass Pike seems to
So-
find a way to do it when they want to collect your money.
Mass Pike.
Right, that's a civil, just a, there's a difference between collecting a toll and collecting a fine that impacts now your insurance and everything else. There's a big difference.
Okay.
Also, you have to keep in mind, when it comes to motor vehicle citations and issuing tickets, the person you cite currently gets a surcharge from their insurance. So it's if you get a ticket, I'm sure you want to have been the person driving. There's some things like that that have to be worked out by the legislature. And when they do, we'll be happy to look at that.
Do you know, Lieutenant Wareham or Deputy Chief Riley, what the legislation and the state is called currently, if we wanted to advocate for it being passed?
I don't, but that's something we can probably look up.
Can find out. Yeah, I heard they were proposed pilot 8 municipalities around the state. I don't know if that's true. Okay.
We can look it up and get back to you.
Yeah, Linda, yeah.
I lived on, lost my voice, lived on Everett Ave, Crazy Street, moved to Pond Street. And the trucks come down all the time. There is a truck ban. Nobody seen any police stop a truck. We have a truck ban. The street underneath the road is not supported by any kind of structure to allow these trucks to bump along down Everett, Pond, Mansfield, Arthur, even Natick, Hartford Street. Our truck ban goes Framingham to Natick. We fought long and hard. The beautiful signs are up. I have never seen a policeman stop a truck. We need help. The dining room, the cabinet, the dishes rattle. They rattle because there's nothing underneath to hold the street up. When these trucks fly down, they don't even drive 15. They don't drive 25. They speed. We need help. Grant Street, Hartford Street, all of our neighborhood is not supported under the ground.
Okay.
Can you help us?
So I'm actually going to ask that today's conversation focus on Warren Road. I know that trucks going down Warren Road has been an issue that's been addressed by the Traffic Commission. There was a conversation about banning trucks on Warren Road.
Can we just go back to
Sure.
your question? Because I know we're not specifically here for that. Right over there is Sergeant Ball. He's in charge of traffic. He works under me. We heard what you said, and we will take a look at it.
And I'm happy to make that connection between you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Joe Doherty. I live on Oaks Road Speedway
as you probably know, between Route 9 and Flag. So as you probably know, it's quite a well-trafficked road and quite fast at that. My question is, well, we had a little speed camera that says your speed is, kind of like the one on Warren that, flashes when you're going fast or driving really fast, and it says, you're going this fast. It often acts as a deterrent, which is way cool. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. My question is, how is the speed data calculated or captured for these roads? If you have a speed camera on Warren, people see it as a deterrent, they slow down. Is that an accurate method of collecting speed data? Thanks.
So some of the newer, I think you're referring to the speed feedback sign, which is the visual display. Some of the newer equipment can also capture that data. That particular device does not. So when we capture data, we put their small black radar boxes. The police have the exact same equipment. They get temporarily mounted to utility poles, but that's where the data that we collect comes from. It does not come from the sign.
When you did put up a sign on Oaks Road, like a temporary one, for a little bit, and it did deter, because I live right across the street from that, it did deter the speed for a little bit, which I'm sure comes from the data that you got up there. The moment that thing came down, the speed went right back up again. And it has been ridiculous. Somebody last night had been doing 60 miles an hour across the street. And, let me add, because Flag Drive being right there, that four-way stop that's there is a mere suggestion. They come flying out of that, especially out of this end of Flag Drive onto Oaks Road, in either direction.
So the city did purchase, or the Public Works purchased, or the Traffic Commission actually, a portable speed feedback sign, which we've tried in multiple neighborhoods. We've collected data. The portable does have data collection. We've looked at that data. On average, it reduces the speeds 1 to 2 miles per hour. So that becomes a decision point whether that's a worthy investment for that type of return. And we have not been, the commission has not been encouraged by that. We've looked at data from other communities. It varies widely how effective they are, but our experience is not, and we've tried it on a number of different streets. It has not been helpful, and I think there's some hesitancy to continue to put permanent ones in the community.
Just in response to that, I'm curious about the average on the top 15%, though. I think you're talking about on average across everything, but if we're talking about the 60-mile-an-hour people, those are the ones we want to drop, I'd be curious to see the data for the top 15%.
So if you look at the background material that we've posted, when we put out the portable device, we include also, as I mentioned, what I look at is the average speed, the 85th percentile speed, and the outliers. So we'll summarize, again, what the change in those three. We usually put the peak speed, which is not a great statistical metric, but in a lot of cases, the peak speeds are actually higher with the display. So that, again, I wouldn't point to that as a great metric, but the average speeds have not changed appreciably. The 85th percentile speeds have not changed appreciably. And then we'll also put into different buckets, 5-mile-per-hour buckets, the outliers. And again, a nominal change, and that's a decision point is that a worthwhile investment for the community to make? So we've tried a lot of things. We tried for the first time a diverter island on a particular road. It wasn't particularly helpful. We've tried
Can you say what a diverter island is?
basically any vertical or horizontal deflection tends to slow traffic down or should slow traffic down. So we put cones as a trial basis to see if cars that would have to adjust their path, again, that's worked in other communities to some degree. We tried it, didn't seem to be particularly effective. We've done curb bump outs. If you look at Grant Street, for instance, where you pull the curbs out at the intersections, that's supposed to help slow cars down. We've tried a lot of things. We've tried enforcement. That's not a great long-term solution, but we've tried a lot of things, and speeding is a tough thing to address. And again, It's not just in Framingham, it's all over. Speeds are up, and it's very tough to get them down.
I want to address the call for access of data. And what I can commit to is getting all of this and posting it on my website, counselormalik.com. Give me a couple of days. But then if we want to delve into some of this more from the Traffic Commission, it'll be there. So, and if you leave me your email, I'll sign you up for my monthly e-newsletter if you're not on it.
I'd like the gentleman to ask this question, but I just had one follow-up to the black box that captures the speed. Is that a temporary measure? Like, was that on the Oaks Road one, for example? You said that the little temporary sign had that device on it. When you collect this data, is it over an extended period of time? Do the black boxes remain for that, in these lots over a period of time? Or was it just that sampling that you had to sign there on this road, for example?
So Public Works has two such devices. When we collect our own data, we typically you can do it as a short of a day. We typically like to get multiple days, so we typically deploy it on a Monday. We capture from that midnight through midnight on Thursday and bring it back in on Friday, download the data. So that allows us, if we have enough manpower, to get 2 locations per week. And again, sometimes we can't keep up with that and we have to farm that out. But typically we do that. When we farm it out, because it's more of a cost, we typically either get 1 day's or 2 days worth of data. So those black boxes just go up on utility poles temporarily. They come down and then we move to the next neighborhood. If anybody's interested, our next Traffic Commission meeting is Tuesday night. You're welcome to observe how we discuss different resident issues. But yes, those are deployed most weeks to get data, but we try to get 72 hours worth of data if we can.
Traffic Commission meetings are both online and in person, so you can tune in virtually.
So the police department has the same black boxes that the DPW uses. And how we deploy them is when we get a complaint, we send out the black box for approximately a week. And that's how we determine, how we address the complaint.
All right, Mike.
Hi, Mike Carney, Robertson Road. Again, thank you all for being here. I realize you guys are here to help work with us, not against us. Can we go back to that screenshot you just had up? The bottom 2 lines, I guess, are the most recent data. Can you say where those boxes were located? It says number 18 and number 27. Is that the number of Warren Road?
So what we try to make sure is we can replicate exactly where that was. And when we deploy them, we attach them to utility poles. So those are actually the utility pole numbers. What I'll do going forward is make sure it's clear. So utility pole 18 is between house number 129 and 133, so it was right on the property line. And utility pole 27 was between houses 206 and 212. So again, we try to make sure that when we create figures, we can depict where that data was collected. So yes, those are the most recent. There was a desire to try to get some new information before this meeting. And just as an example, so you look at that, 25 mile per hour, in this case, a regulatory speed limit, and the 85th percentile speeds were anywhere from 29 to 33. And I know, anything above the speed limit is speeding, but not that many years ago, most of the city was 30 miles per hour. And MassDOT will even acknowledge just changing the speed limit without doing anything else is unlikely to change behavior. And so, in a lot of cases, speeds haven't changed. Yes, we dropped that in an attempt to slow people down, but unless you couple it with something else, it's unlikely to change. So, frankly, there's spots in the city where speeding is close or at 15 miles per hour above the 85th percentile. And I think when we try to figure out where to deploy our resources, I think we're looking at those locations. And, I'm not saying that this neighborhood isn't important. We have done things. We've done the 4-way stop. We recently enhanced the crosswalk signage. We're looking over at Arsenal Road to see if we can do something more permanent. But, you know, I look at this data and compared to other locations that also are competing for our time, it does not seem to be quite as problematic as some other neighborhoods.
I agree. It doesn't look that bad when you say 85% and you're saying westbound or eastbound is 33, westbound is 29, and 30 and 31 on the other side. I think most people in this audience will say, on a daily basis, we can stand out there and see people going by at 40 miles an hour all the time. And as Officer Lynch said, you know, it's not the 50, it's not the 100 cars that go by, it's that one car that goes by that's doing the 80, the 90. But we're seeing too many of it. Too many times that we see that. The applause, and again, it's hard to fight your data, but on the other hand, I can't say you're telling me I shouldn't believe my lying eyes is what the data is saying, because we see it all the time. I mean, you all know about the recent accident on Flag Drive. That 1%, that one car going through, I gotta believe he was speeding coming down, going through Flag Drive, because he ended up on the lawn. For people that don't know about it, he ended up on the lawn 2 houses down. Thank goodness it wasn't an early release day, or we'd have had a much more serious situation. So I don't know what you can do. I'm not in favor of speed bumps. I think we've got 9 or 10 signs between, one version of signs, between speed limit signs, pedestrian crossings, the pedestrian crossings on the walkway itself. There's about 9 of them between Oaks Road and Prindiville, and that's not doing any good. So I don't see where a sign is going to do anything more. Another thing, I don't know what you can do.
So, someone asked me to comment on that accident that happened a few weeks ago. So yes, that car was definitely speeding. That car was definitely, you know, over the double yellow lines, but that was a criminal case that was going on. And that was actually one of our deputy chiefs that was struck by that vehicle. But it was a little bit more than just speeding to that particular case and that particular person. So that's what I can comment on that.
But he's not the only one speeding through.
No,
I
think it's important to realize that no one is disagreeing that there's not speeding happening in your neighborhoods. Every neighborhood meeting we go to, in the 22 years I've been with the Framingham PD, the #1 subject in every community meeting is what exactly we're talking about, is speed. It is the biggest concern in every neighborhood. It comes down to, okay, when we deploy the resources and where. So if the data shows, and please correct me because I'm not a data guy, but if the data shows, okay, yes, we had someone that did 60 miles an hour at, we'll call it 8:19 p.m. or whatever the time may be, you got to understand we're limited on resources, and that's happening all over the city. And put an officer there for an hour at that particular time to maybe catch that one person, it's like shooting fish in a barrel sometimes, but then other times it's not, right? So we concentrate our traffic enforcement on high impact locations where there's traffic accidents, where we know we're going to have the biggest bang for our buck. That's not to say we don't deploy resources into your neighborhood. We always do. And guess what? You're going to probably see an increase in your neighborhood starting this week, okay? Because we'll put people in there. These meetings do that.
Everybody
now,
drive accordingly.
Our threshold, though, I'm going to ask our traffic enforcement officers to lower their threshold, because that's what I'm hearing in this auditorium. You know, a lot of traffic officers would wait till someone hits about the 10 mile per hour over the speed limit before they'll stop you. Well, maybe we have a zero tolerance. You go 1 mile and over, I want them stopped. Cite them. It may, you know what I mean? So we have to, maybe we have to have a zero tolerance going forward in that particular neighborhood to see if maybe that'll help. It's just an idea. But again, just be aware of that. Your neighbors, your friends and family are probably going to get stopped if we go out there and do that.
Yeah, if we do, we
Thank
deserve
you.
it, I guess. I understand what you're saying, and your hands are tied by budgets and personnel, et cetera.
All right, looks like we've got a line of folks here. Do you have
If I
another?
can ask just one more
Yeah.
thing? As to what can be done over situations that, another thing we see every day is the noise. Sit. I don't know if you hear it.
It's a motorbike. Yeah. It's a car. That's a car.
Let me play it again.
Is this the unregulated mufflers?
To answer that, if an officer, hears a harsh and objectionable noise or something to that effect, that car can be stopped if it meets a Chapter 90 violation.
It's
But-
every day, numerous times. And as you said, if you talk about, the only thing I can see happening is what we need, you tell me, is enforcement, as you said. There it is again, excuse me. I think any day you go by there, if you sit outside between 4 and 6, coming off of Flag Drive onto Warren Road, it's like they're starting off on a racetrack.
There you go. You got a specific 4 to 6 p.m. Flag Drive to Warren Road.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Noted.
I mean,
Oh, now other people are going to tell you where else they want you to go with those. But we got a place to start. All right. Thank you.
Just one last thing. I just out of curiosity, I can see from my house the Flag Drive stop sign at Warren Road, and I filmed it. And if you take out the left-hand turns or the right-hand turns that are challenged by somebody coming southbound on Warren Road, out of 60 cars, maybe 30 did a rolling stop. The other 30, they didn't even treat it as if it was a yield sign. They're just blowing right through that as if the stop sign's not even there. And this is during school time with kids walking home.
There are no crossing guards on Warren. Is that
Yeah, there is one.
correct? There is
There
one?
is one, but they don't enforce.
Okay.
Sorry I took so much time. Thank you.
Thanks.
Hello, I'm Diane Tiger, and we live on the corner of Nelson and Forest, so right off of Warren Road. I've been there 14 years, and I have a child both kids have had bus stops on Warren Road, and so since the digital signage has gone up, it's been extremely enlightening to stand on the corner of Forest and Warren and watch the cars going from Walnut towards Flag. And the number of cars that are going approximately 10 miles over the speed limit. And, they're going into the 25-mile-per-hour zone. We've had a lot of conversation around things that we don't have a lot of control over or very difficult to affect, like changing the signage and cameras and things like that. I think what we do have control over, you started talking about, which is enforcement. Because in the 14 years that I've been there, I don't know if I've ever seen somebody monitoring the traffic where I particularly live and stand. I drive that road every day to work. I work over at TJX, and I regularly see a car parked in front of the meat store on 126 by Route 30 at rush hour, where traffic is going about 5 miles an hour. And I don't see how that's adding value when we have a extremely pedestrian-heavy area that maybe by numbers is not meeting other parts of the city, but I'd like to know, apples for apples, are these places where people are speeding through? Is it the same type of narrow road with lots of children, lots of pedestrians, lots of bikers, lots of walkers that can potentially be injured, and no shoulder, and all these other components? And that's where I think I'd like to see some enforcement, because I think that will help habitualize people to say, I might get caught, I might get tagged, it's gonna cost me money, and I'm gonna start to slow down. So that's my question, is how can we get more enforcement?
Do you want to address that, PD? No? More enforcement, wrote it down.
We're gonna saturate that place like you've never seen.
Everybody's going to slow down.
Homes where the traffic is going 5 miles an hour, but yet there is a car sitting there, and yet the intersection is still gridlocked. So there's nothing happening there, but there is a resource there. But we're all begging for enforcement.
No, and I totally understand it. I truly, truly do. But we look at the data, right? Where is the speeding happening throughout the city, right? We have to look at this, and I get it. This is your neighborhood, right? Totally understand. But from the police perspective, we're looking at where are the issues in the city, and where do we need to send our traffic enforcement officers to for high accident locations, speed that is definitely, you know, when we get it from the experts to say, hey, this is a speeding problem. I want you to understand that's where we're sending our resources. And we have 2 officers assigned to our traffic unit, 2. And then we have our officers that are out on the street, but they get deployed to do traffic enforcement, but they're also answering those 911 calls. So for instance, on a day like right now, there's 7 patrol officers in the city right now. And they're answering calls, 911 calls, et cetera. And then when we send them, and we will, trust me, an email will go out probably tonight saying, hey, can we do some enforcement in these areas? They'll get there, they'll set up, and then all of a sudden, okay, we have a 911 call on this street, and they got to leave. So that's some of the things that unfortunately we fight with. It's not an excuse, it's just the reality of our business, where a 911 call is going to take a priority over some of that enforcement. But we will get the enforcement out there, I promise you that.
All right.
Good morning, Greg Palmer. I live at 188 Warren Road, which is uniquely positioned here at the corner of Flag and Warren. So we're, if you know the area, we're on the corner opposite the Stone House. So just to make this personal, and I understand these data points show one snapshot, but the data points that are not here that we haven't talked about are the near misses. We've talked about some of the rolling stop signs. How about property damage? Our house was hit. We lost an entire addition, had to put an addition back on the house. Speeding, drunk driver, speeding. We heard front stairs. I've seen cars drive across lawns. I've seen that collision that was, yeah, raise your hand if your yard's been driven on or your house has been hit or some property's been hit. And I'm thankful for the work that our police have done. They've been responsive. They've shown up when we've had these issues. And to a point, we trust that next week, Warren Road's gonna be really well policed. But it's 2 weeks from now that the problem sets in. And we've lived in this house for 20 years. And I would say the same thing now that I said 19 years ago at my first traffic commission meeting. You have enough, there's enough tickets out there to be written to cover as many positions as you want for people to write them. It's the elephant in the room that we haven't talked about, and I've never really understood the answer. You can hire more police officers to write tickets.
We don't get the money if we write a money citation. That
so there's no revenue driven for the town for writing tickets?
So I believe the way the revenue goes is the state gets half goes back into the general fund of the city. But when we do traffic enforcement, it's not a revenue producing function.
But even if half was coming back to the general fund, right? Even if half was coming back to the general fund.
That's not a
come to the city council when we start talking about the budget.
But I'm saying
it's an open invitation to anybody.
When people want to solve a problem, they solve it. If it's important enough, you solve it. You find a way to solve it. So Mike was just talking about 60 cars that he took video of. I did the same thing on Wednesday, just for fun. I did the same thing, and it was about 8:05 to 8:10, 5 minutes, 60 cars, literally. 1/3 of the cars, pretty close to stop. 1/3 of the cars, it would be an offense if you follow the book. They definitely rolled through the stop sign, and 1/3 just run it. So when we have a police officer that's stationed, and sometimes they've been in our driveway, which we're happy to offer up, or on Robertson Road or wherever, you could pull over as many cars as you want in the time you're there. If you're there for an hour, you'll pull over 20, 30 cars, no problem. And so I think that this should be looked at. The only thing that's going to change this, the four-way stop sign at Printerville is great. We should have three-way stop sign at the corner of Flag and Warren. There should be a three-way stop sign at the corner of Oaks Road and Warren. And we should make people miserable I'm sorry.
So I think kind of going by what Mr. Sedowitz said a little while ago, is this is a very, very complex problem. And trust me when I tell you, it is everywhere, every city, town in the country. It really is. It's everywhere. And every neighborhood meeting we go to, we get the same thing. And like you said, we'll come in, we'll saturate the place next week and the next couple of weeks, and then we go to the next part of the problem. Unfortunately, we just don't have the manpower to put a cop on every street to enforce traffic all over the city. And that's really what we're being asked to do. And so we move people, so we'll rotate people through, but what I guess the thing was is even did we walk away, so we could be there for 8 hours today, and then at 4 o'clock, all of a sudden what happens? Someone violates the law, and they, well, where were the police? So, and again, it really, unfortunately, I would love to have the answer for you. How do we fix the problem, right? Because we do enforcement, we do engineering, we do education, we do all of those things. It's just unfortunate that no matter what happens, we enforce today, we enforce this afternoon, and then later on tonight, some young kid or just speeds, and then, okay, where were you? So it's a battle that, unfortunately, we probably will never win, but we're going to try our best to just, tame it down so we keep these numbers, the true numbers that are getting a lot of data. They're up there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week when they're collecting this data. So it is getting a true picture. It's not getting a moment in time. It actually is getting a bigger picture. It's not,
right, but it's
missing
missing a lot. I think we can agree it misses a lot. I agree with you that it's a snapshot for a week or whatever it is. But I think the only thing that works in anything in life is accountability. It's the only thing that works. And the only accountability you have here is writing a citation. There is no other accountability. If the speed limit was 10 on Warren Road, it wouldn't matter. People are still going to drive 30 and 40. It would not matter. You could make it 5. You could make it 25. It doesn't matter. So the only thing that matters is accountability, and the only way to provide accountability is to have citations written. That's the only way. And it's not that I am not appreciative of all of this, but we've been spinning the wheels in my time for 20 years on Warren Road, I'm sure a lot longer than that, and nothing's really changed very much. There are still plenty of accidents, there's still houses getting hit, there's still, this move at McCarthy was a great move. Last Wednesday, a week ago Wednesday, driving up Flag Drive towards my house, car came out of that driveway. They're trying to push people to the right. There's no human there. They took a left, couldn't see, over the row of cars, pulled out, big accident right there in front on Flag Drive. So that was just a week ago Wednesday. And so again, there's nobody there to enforce what the law or what the rules are saying to folks. And that's the only way this is going to change. And again, I'm appreciative. And the last thing that I would like to see, Warren Road and surrounding roads are extremely dark at night. There's no lights. Halloween is a disaster. 2 years ago, you guys had patrol cars running through lights the whole time. It was wonderful. This year, totally dark. There's like one every 3 or 4 lights. They're not rotating. It's the same light staying on. It's dim, it's dull, and as other people have said, we're like a community of walkers, runners. There's tons of kids out, bikes, like at night. And now where it's dark at 4:30, it's a big problem. And I think that's one thing we've got to do is increase the light. Thanks.
Awesome,
Sorry.
thank you. So it looks like we have at least 7 people in line, and we do have a hard stop at 11:30 because there's another group using the auditorium. So thanks everybody for your patience.
Hi everybody, James Gibney, Oaks Road. First off, thank you all so much for being here. It's a tough position on the dais up there. We're all coming right at you, so we appreciate you guys taking this. I'm really only up here because this is being recorded, and I told my wife I'd say something. So
Noted.
If you wouldn't mind throwing up the statistics for traffic one more time. The table, I did observe Oaks Road, only capturing 2 days of data. I'm not going to argue statistics with you, but 2 days, that's a pretty short snapshot. And also 2020, we all know anecdotally, everybody was hunkered down. So I would like to advocate to maybe get another monitor up there and just collect some data. Maybe we can extend it a little bit as well. The other question I have for you guys, I guess I've just heard a lot of things about complications, what we can't do legally. Totally get that. What can we do? I know I appreciate you taking our observations and comments, and let me obviously say, I'm proud to say I live in Framingham. Public safety, public works are absolutely terrific. So we appreciate you guys taking these comments. What else can we do? What other traffic mitigation measures? Those elevated tables you see at a four-way stop. I know we don't like speed bumps, nobody does, but something like that. Or what other options can we advocate for, and what channels can we advocate through to get those done? So thank you very much.
Yeah, if you let me know where, when people ask for data, I'm happy to get data, but sometimes then we get questioned whether we didn't get in the right spot. So if there's a particular location, I know Oaks Road very well. If there's a particular location that you like that data, I'll be happy to get that in the near term. As far as what can be done.
Wait, Mr. Sedowitz, how do they get that data to you? Is that Traffic Commission email? What's the best way?
That's fine. There's a traffic commission at framinghamma.gov. My initials are WRS at framinghamma.gov. There's a limited number of tools, and like I said, we've tried things in different locations. We're not adverse to trying them again, but there is a speed feedback sign, 2 of them on Warren Road. Again, we haven't had great success. I'm not sure that's something we'd try there. Speed humps in particular are very controversial, so I don't think the commission would go down that road. There is a policy, a citywide traffic calming policy to require citizen petition to initiate that. If the citizens get together and feel like there's a desire to pursue that, happy to do it. Less intrusive measures, again, we've tried on our own, Diverter Island, we tried, but there aren't a ton of options to try to slow people down. Again, it's much more broadly than this neighborhood, this state, frankly. But we're willing to try things. If people have ideas, we're willing to engage and try. You heard enforcement. Again, that's probably not the longest term solution. But there are only so many things, in the toolbox, frankly. And, but we're happy to have the conversation if people got creative ideas to look at. As far as stop signs, I hate to go back to, there are rules that constrain us, and stop signs are not intended to address speeding. So there's criteria for the number of accidents, both for individual stop signs at an intersection or for stop signs at every approach, basically a multi-way stop sign. So unless you meet or get near that accident criteria, those are not appropriate and they're not intended to address speed. So again, within the rules that sort of govern traffic control in this country, we're willing to try things, experiment, and we're open for suggestions.
And I'll remind everybody there's a public comment period at all traffic commission meetings as well as all city council meetings, and all open meetings have a public comment requirement.
Hi, Kara Chase, Stony Brook Road. Thank you all, and thank you everyone for taking the time to hear us today. I moved to the neighborhood just over 2 years ago. I am a parent of 2 young toddlers. When I first moved into the neighborhood and started meeting all of the neighbors, one of the first things that I kept hearing over and over again is, wow, our neighborhood hasn't had kids in a really long time. And now half of our street is made up of families with young children, and I know the surrounding streets as well. As you know, Stony Brook Road doesn't have a sidewalk, so we feel with the speeding, people walking their dogs, us trying to ride bikes and walk with our kids is we're putting our lives at risk with these cars flying down the street. Similarly to Oaks, we're in a tough situation with Oaks and Stony Brook and Flag being these, notorious cut-through streets. And I think a lot of it has already been said, right? The, lack of enforcement, there's certainly challenges with that, but we're seeing firsthand in our neighborhoods, this lack of enforcement is, people feel like neighbors who live on the street, people cutting through, school buses have no problem flying down the street if there are no consequences. The only other thing I wanted to mention was, just as someone who's frequently out walking the neighborhood, running, driving through the neighborhood, is the four-way stop sign at Flag and Oaks. Just on my walk here, I saw 2 people fly through it. There wasn't a rolling stop. It was that stop sign doesn't even exist. And it's different, right, when you're with your 2 young kids and trying to teach them safety, walking on the sidewalk even. The stop signs going on to Warren Road from Flag, Oaks Road, and Prindville. I run Warren Ave almost every weekend with my kids. 8 o'clock in the morning, there's no one on the roads, yet whoever's coming down that street has no regard for that stop sign and pedestrians walking up to that stop sign. And so just another anecdote of a neighbor in the community, a residential community, not being able to feel safe walking about the neighborhood with the speeding and the complete disregard for the stop signs that have strategically been put in place. Thank you.
Thank you. My name's Tad Barney. I live in Warren Road, past 21 years. I was really interested in the data because I saw that you guys were collecting it, and I'm glad that you were sharing this. A couple of questions I have on that. How is the police department using this data to know when to target times for enforcement? Like you just learned 2 to 4 o'clock. This is the time I would come out and look for, violations. How are you using that data to know when people are speeding more than the 85% number?
You're talking about traffic enforcement?
Yeah, so knowing when, because people aren't, obviously there's certain times of the day people like to speed because the road's wide open and they can line up and just shoot down the roads.
So generally, we do traffic enforcement is we get so many complaints. I have 1 traffic enforcement officer, there's 2. 1 is reassigned currently. So when we get a complaint, we put the data out there most times, the data box, and it breaks it down in increments. And we can see when speed's more prevalent. Sometimes someone will say, oh, they're speeding at 5 o'clock down my road. So I'll have Deputy Chief Riley send something out to patrol to say at 5 o'clock, you need to assign an officer here to address this.
So you're reading the data box, finding the hours that have the peak speeding, and that's when you guys are patrolling? Yes. I just want to confirm that. Okay. Second question, this I guess goes to the how are you accounting for the times of the day, the data points where basically it's backed up? If you're ever on Warren Road, so are you recording the cars that are going probably less than 1 mile an hour, sitting there trying to go down the road? And is that influencing that average speed, or are you just discounting those off the data sets?
So that does get rolled into the averages, you're right, but you can look at the volumes and the speeds and try to make adjustments for that, to take that into consideration. That recently came up somewhere else where we did some trial measures and significantly slowed down traffic to becoming a significant congestion issue. But yeah, you have to account for the fact that those averages may include
So do those numbers account for it?
Free-flowing traffic, correct.
They do, that's only free-flowing, not...
No, I think it takes the average and it does not take into account that, so I think you just have to look at the data with that eye.
Okay.
Yeah, in some cases, the traffic's backed up, so speeding is
So,
just not possible.
I guess that's my point. You're reporting these to the state, apparently, right? Is what the state's looking at. Are you making sure the data they're looking at is accurately reflective of actually when cars are able to drive fast? Because obviously when it's backed up, they can't drive 60 miles an hour because it's effectively a speed bump, right?
Did you say when the state looks at that?
I thought you were using this with the state. The state looks at the 85% speed, and that's what they're judging as far as if there's a traffic issue. I mean, a speeding issue.
So the only time the state would look at this if we're trying to make changes. So
That's what
this
I'm
is
saying.
data we just use. So I'd have to go back to, again, the only time we've approached the state to change a speed limit, presumably that particular study took that into account. That was some time back. I'd have to look at it. But this data is just used internally. It's very rare we petition the state to
Okay.
try to make changes, so.
So
But
that's what I'm getting at.
presumably
So
if
can
we
you
look-
share the right number as where I'm going to, so we know it doesn't take into account?
Okay, so, all right, so there's a request for, again, we have 6
All right,
minutes
I'll let it
before
go,
you
but I'm
have
trying to
to
get is we just
leave.
want the right
But the
numbers.
idea that the data at different times of day might be reflective of stopped traffic where people are unable to go, which is going to bring down that average speed. So maybe we can get some of that breakdown.
Thank you.
Yeah, next. I want to give everybody a chance to speak.
Yeah, I know you're beholden to the 85 percentile rule, but that's car-centric. That doesn't consider the residents, pedestrians. It's what's safe for cars to drive versus what the people in the neighborhood feel. It's absolutely a quality of life issue, as you pointed out in the beginning, officer. Just to go back to pedestrians, folks walking to McCarthy, walking to Fuller, walking the other direction to Bowditch, walking downtown, walking to Mass Bay, walking their dogs, running. Like, I would rather see a holistic approach. I know speed bumps aren't popular. I would sign off on speed bumps in a heartbeat. But raised sidewalks and even more visibility to the sidewalks, illuminated sidewalk signs that just place a priority over pedestrians versus cars, just to kind of, I mean, I don't know, I live on Warren Road, by the way, 34 Warren, and I don't know how many times I've seen kids in the morning just waiting to cross the street from Forest Ave to go to just across the street onto Warren so that they can be on the right side of the street when they turn left to McCarthy or Fuller. That's pretty much it. Just a pedestrian-centric approach, I think, is a way to make us feel safer and also slow down traffic.
So just last year, the city formed a bicycle, pedestrians, and sidewalks committee. I think that's the title officially of it. So they are trying to look at a complete streets design also moving forward, which is something that we've embraced, but that sidewalk, pedestrian, bike lane, they're looking holistically at all of Framingham. So that would be another place where folks could get involved.
Awesome. Also, shout out to sidewalk plowing, DPW. You guys are one of my favorite things about living in Framingham. So,
Jonathan Ball. I live on 34 Kittredge, which is right between Stony Brook and Oaks. And I think it's unreasonable to think that just treating it from the violation side is going to take care of any kind of problem. That is short-term in nature, short-term thinking. I think we need to be looking at the actual layout, the speed bumps, things that are permanent, speed bumps, sidewalks, and someone earlier mentioned about at nighttime, that neighborhood is the darkest neighborhood I've ever lived in my life. So our road, Kittredge, has one overhead light. There's one on one corner, there's one on the far corner, one in the middle. There's at least 3 or 4 houses between each light. I think Stony Brook is even darker. Oaks is very dark. At nighttime, it is very, very unsafe to walk around the neighborhood. So I would encourage people to think less about treating the violations and think more about the actual permanent facilities down on the road, something that our DPW group could probably put together if everybody signed off on it. Last thing, I just heard something about violations with cameras, and that is a scary, scary concept with me to get a ticket from a camera. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kathy Alpert. I live in 13 Clovelly Lane, and I can tell you some of the things that you've heard is true. We have no sidewalks on Clovelly, and we also find that when Walnut and Warren back up beyond Clovelly, people will either go Forest Ave Extension or Clovelly. Let me tell you, Clovelly has a curve. As they come out of that curve, the gas pedal is hit, and no sidewalks, and we have kids on our street, plus the school of McCarthy and Fuller. Kids come from that school, cut down Clovelly to get out to Walnut, okay? And probably the same thing happens on Forest Ave. I could be wrong. I don't know. I don't live excuse me, I don't live it, which is where Eden and Nelson is to get out to Union. Our street is also very dark. We have no sidewalks. We get nobody for Halloween. 0. Okay? A big goose egg.
Is that a request?
And because we have one street light, and we've been here 30 years, my husband and I. Prior to the new houses that were built on Clovelly Lane was all forest, it was wetlands, excuse me, okay? It's not safe to walk down that street at night because it's so dark. But what I'm finding is because they come off of when Warren backs up, that they come around that corner so fast, no sidewalks. I'm so scared kids are gonna get hit. Again, kids come down that way, come to Clovey in the morning early to go to school, and also at the end of the day. There's also during the day, there's people who jog, walk their dogs, like us. We have 2 dogs. And we walk also on Warren Road, and yes, they fly down. And the funny thing is, my husband and I will walk opposite of the traffic on the sidewalk, and you can feel that breeze go right by you. Okay? That's a problem. I don't care, those speed, thank you, people are just flying through it. They're flying through it. At the 4 stop sign over at Prindiville,
Warren,
not
Prindiville, Denison,
yeah.
Shawmut.
People fly through that. They don't stop at that stop sign. When they first came out a few years ago with the 4-way stop, I thought that was great. But
Yeah,
they
we've talked about that.
They don't. And I'll tell you, as far as speed bumps, yes, I would love to see them on Warren. They work on Grove Street. They do slow people down on Grove Street because we go over there by Edmonds to go to Callahan State Park. And it does slow down the traffic.
All right, great. Yep.
Edmonds and Grove.
Edmonds and Grove, yep. Okay, so we've got,
I would like to see something. I don't know if you can get some officers, not there every day, but in a plain clothes, grab a chair, sit at the corner and watch.
all right.
Watch. Because the minute they see you in a uniform or a car, they're gonna hit the brakes to slow down to that speed limit.
All right, thank you. We got final comment, and then I'm going to rudely encourage us all to quickly exit the room.
Hi, Patricia Epperly, Brigham Road. Thank you all for being here. Two questions. One is the light at Walnut and Union. When will that be operational? Will it be a smart light? And secondly, Dr. Tremblay, when the playground equipment was taken out of McCarthy, it was because of safety reasons. I think it's a travesty because we have a neighborhood filled with children. We also have the Musterfield. And I would like to know if that equipment will be installed, the playground will be installed on the Flag Drive part like it used to be. I mean, for 20 years we had wonderful equipment there. Will that be installed at some date in the future?
Okay, so the light at Walnut and Union is going to go live.
So presumably, hopefully early next year, so that's MassDOT controls that project. I do not anticipate that they'll do that over the winter. Hopefully they'll do it in the spring, but contractually it could be, summer, but yeah.
Okay.
And then I'll comment on the playground. We do not have any plans to reinstall that equipment, but there is a full playground in the back of McCarthy.
Oh, I'm well aware of that, but it pales in comparison to what used to be there. And I still don't understand why can't we have a playground in the front of the building?
Yeah.
To have parity among all the schools in Framingham. Now, McCarthy, it looks terrible. Like there's no place for these kids to play. And we have the whole Musterfield. We have a lot of young families in the neighborhood. I don't understand. Is it really for safety reasons? Put up a guardrail along that access road. I don't know. There must be a way. We have the same, I've been here 36 years. My son had the tires, they're like 50 years old, and 2 swings. I mean, really? Come on.
I mean, studies apart from all of that, I don't think having a playground in the front on Flag Drive is a safe place to have kids running for all the
It
reasons
was,
that have been.
there was never an accident there.
Just for all the
those
reasons that have, all the reasons that have been pointed out for speed, I think that's a real concern for any of us as parents. We do have, as has been mentioned, to help build it, the playground in the back, as you well know. We do have a capital plan of other playgrounds to be installed. I'm happy to share that with you. We can look at that again, but a playground generally in a front of a school on a busy road, that's
Well,
obviously
Brophy-
untenable.
Brophy
Okay,
has-
so I'm going to ask that you continue this conversation.
Okay, thank you.
On the side. I want to thank everybody for coming, and we will be in touch.